everybody. I'm Ethan Chazin, a New York-based organization development coach. Welcome back to Chazin-the-Dream, where today I'm excited to have my friend Ben Indiviglia on. Ben's a native Long Islander with a background in banking, financial services, and lending. He also has prior experience with distressed residential properties. He serves Long Island by helping commercial property owners sell and lease their commercial property. And recently, he's been helping retiring professionals, doctors, lawyers, dentists, and financial advisors transition into their retirement years by marketing their commercial property for sale. In his spare time outside of work, he enjoys fishing and gambling. I mean, poker. And welcome to the show, Ben. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Not at all. My pleasure. I want to ask you something because you and I have known each other for a long time, or a relatively long time. You were kind enough to have me join your business relationship group. And one of the things early on you said was that being in real estate really mapped to your values. And you had said something recently where you said you really like it because it allows you to stay in the relationship journey with your clients until you get to closing. And to me, that is all about relationship, kind of establishing trust. And I'm wondering where that came from, like why that is so important to you.
Well, it's a good question because it doesn't apply to everyone, but I've been a relational guy for as long as I can remember. I think it part of it goes back to my upbringing and how my father raised me. My father was born 1926, so I was raised a little old school in comparison to some people my age. And with that came the traditional values and building a relationship with people, doing right by people, and it stuck with me. And he had always told me something that your reputation follows you wherever you go. So no matter what you're doing or what occupation, what field you're in, people will know you and remember you based on your reputation and how you treat them. So it's something that's simple, and you would think it's just like a common sense, but along the way, I feel like we've lost the luster of building relationships in this world of technology and now AI and everything. So I still like to break bread with people, sit down, have lunch, have coffee, breakfast, whatever it is, and get to know them a little bit, because if we're going to have any type of business relationship, there needs to be a certain level of trust and a certain level of integrity in which you need to operate. And again, it's been a little lacking the past few years, so it's ever more important now than ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating to me because you talk a lot about your reputation and building your reputation as somebody who can stand on their word. And I guess I'm curious, I've had a lot of experience with people from various backgrounds in terms of going into real estate. And when I'm curious, when you mentor people who are just coming into the industry, what advice and counsel do you give people, whether they're at Douglas Elliman or even other firms? Like what would be your core advice?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the reasons that I have always been reluctant to be a broker myself, is because my name is then tied to others that I would be working with, and I've always found it that finding somebody that operates in the same work ethic or the same level of integrity, to me it's most important, and I value it, so I don't ever want to jeopardize it. So one of the things I tell and anybody that's new in the business or changing careers is that if you're going to do it right. Become a student of your business, engulf yourself in the business, and try to connect yourself and align yourself with people of similar values, and build good relationships, because those relationships will carry you along in your career. And I personally like to have a handful of people in every occupation that I can go to, because you don't want to put your eggs all in one basket. You don't want to just have one go-to person for whatever, a real estate attorney, a lender, an inspector, an environmental company, whatever the case may be. It's good to have a few people, but it's weeding them out and getting to know if they operate at your same level.
You, as I mentioned, we met when you were kind enough to allow me to join your business referral group. And one of the things you were just telling me is in your group, you care very much about relationship cultivation. So you facilitate the group by having one person per function, per role, around the table. And I'm curious, what led you to start the lunch leads and why is it so important to you to cultivate those relationships? And then I want to ask you later on about work ethic and your dad.
Okay. So with the group, it's a way to facilitate those long-term relationships, because as you spend time with each other, even if it's only for an hour a week, you get to know the person, you get to hear who they're working with, who they're helping, how they speak. It kind of unveils the person behind the little 2-inch cube on your Zoom call, and
Yep.
it allows you to get to know them better. I always recommend for everyone to meet one on one, and to meet again, breakfast, coffee, lunch, whatever it is, because once you solidify those relationships, they can last you your career. They can last you a lifetime. I've become friendly with some of the people that have been in the group because of just like mind thinking. So it's really building long term relationships.
So that was one of the things that struck me when we talked about what were the lessons that you learned growing up was building relationships, honoring your word. And the other thing you talk about a lot coming from growing up in the household that you did was the value of work and strong work ethic. And you were telling me, you've been working since you were 12 years old. You had kind of a
Mhm.
newspaper route. I did a similar thing. And you mentioned that it came from your father, ninth grade education, started his own trucking business. Where does I guess I'm curious about the strong work ethic and how that has to do with you deciding, you and a buddy when you were 17 or 18 running a pizza place together, that you were going to never work for an organization. You were always kind of doing your own thing. And just kind of how did that evolve for you throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, again, it definitely, the work ethic came, I believe, from my father, because he was, again, when you're self-employed, you don't work 9 to 5. You're working. It was more like 5 to 9, basically. But I would see him, at night when he came home for work, maybe for dinner, and on Sundays, pretty much, he would come to my soccer games. But when I was, I don't know, 15, maybe on Friday nights when my friends were hanging out, going out, I was working. I was working as a busboy in a restaurant, and like you had mentioned, at 17, running a pizzeria with a friend. We didn't. Granted, we grew up in the suburbs, but we didn't have everything that everybody else had. So if I wanted something, I had to go out and get it myself, and
Right.
that still applies today. You know, it, it's, again, I mentioned earlier that the work ethic today is quite different from our upbringing. And granted, if you can make enough money to support your family and do well and be happy, and you only have to work 10 hours a day, and you have your own YouTube channel, or your own you're a social influencer, God bless you if that's what you enjoy to do. I don't think it's as practical as many people think, but sometimes you have to learn on your own, and so be it.
Right.
But yeah, that the work ethic definitely came from my father, I believe. But and we spoke about this briefly. Right out of high school, I went to work at a bank as a bank teller.
A bank
Going
teller.
through
Yeah.
college, and I experienced seeing people on a Friday afternoon line out the door, everybody coming in with their pay stub, and cashing their check, and you know putting $100 into savings, and pulling $100 out for pocket money and whatever, and
Right.
and the rest was gone. And every week it was the same thing over and over and over again. And I did not see anybody really accumulating wealth. And the people who did have bigger balances in their accounts and seemed to be, more affluent, were the ones that were self-employed. And there was actually, I didn't tell you this, but there was a gentleman who rented or had office space above the bank branch, because it was a two-story building, and he had his own insurance brokerage, and he did very well, and he was self-employed. So I also witnessed people, get laid off and come in and have to pull money out of their accounts because they had no income. And in particular, there were, people my age now. I just turned 50. I would see people at my age come in and say, "Oh, I got laid off from my job, and I need to take money out of my savings account and stuff like that." And I don't know, between my father and what I observed, and just the overall impression, being an employee was just not something I had really set my sights on. And I've been, a rainmaker for probably close to 20 years now, and I'm okay with it. It's a it's a hustle. There's always a pipeline, and you have to manage it, and it's good. I like it.
You said something to me that I think plays nicely with this conversation around the entrepreneurial spirit and the benefits of having that thing called indentured servitude of a paycheck every other week versus being the lord of your own castle or domain. You said that you should, for people, use your day job. I don't know if you remember this. You said use your day job to build your side hustle.
Yes.
And I was curious, given your kind of going back to when you're a bank teller and your observations in real estate and kind of seeing
Hmm.
people come and go, what that means. And especially nowadays, and especially post-COVID, and this world of interacting, as you said, building relationships often virtually. How do you do that?
Well, it's everything in life is balance, right? So if you're able to maintain a job, a 9 to 5, so to speak, and meet your obligations, and use that as a tool to either save money to build something else, or to parlay it into building your own business, or take the experience that you learn to build your own business. I still think that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in America. I think that's why people are, hopping over the border to come here, is for opportunity, and that it still exists. And if you go after it, you can achieve it. And I think that's what many of us that are self-employed are trying to do, is to accomplish our goals, not be under someone else's direction, and basically go after it ourselves and build our own legacy. It's not always easy, and I think that's what makes it worthwhile if you stick with it. Some
I,
people have what it takes, some people don't. I mean, even today, there's peaks and valleys in real estate. You have a pipeline to manage, and you always are continuing to add to that pipeline, because once a property achieves its goal and is either sold or leased, you have to then replace it with another, and that's where the networking comes into play, and building those relationships that last over time.
Any thoughts about, I mean, I struggle with this a lot. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with the notion of you have your own control being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing, but it comes with peaks and valleys. And having been on my own for 14 years, I'm kind of smiling as you talk through your own experiences. Um, we both know what the emotional toll it could take, especially after a global pandemic. But we had talked about, you had mentioned a quote. You talk about not everybody is suited for this. You said, observe the masses, do the opposite. And the notion of you saw it as this kind of 17, 18-year-old or at that age bank teller,
Mhm.
and you saw it firsthand, and that was formative. I guess I'm curious if there are any other thoughts you have about relationship cultivation and teaching people not to look at each other as transactional cash registers, but how to build those relationships so that you can pursue your entrepreneurial spirit.
Mhm.
That's kind of what my
No.
thought process is, because you're so comfortable in this world, but a lot of people, whether they're starting their career or midlife career transitioners to go out on their own,
Mhm.
this is
Well,
a
all right.
fearful
So
thing.
I'll speak to real estate, because it's what I know right now. And um, if you're getting into real estate right now, for the most part, I would think it would be swimming upstream because of the environment that we're in locally here with the supply restraints, right? So real estate companies are experiencing lower revenues just due to lower number of transactions, right? So everybody's fighting over the same deal and trying to generate their next listing, so to speak. So getting into the business now is probably a little bit more difficult than it has been in other times. Just a few years back, when it was like you pop a listing on Monday and it's sold on Tuesday, and the supply demand is kind of fueling that, and rates have kind of thrown a wrench in the work, so to speak. So if you were to get into real estate now, it would probably be a little bit more difficult. If you have a 9 to 5, so to speak, and you have some income coming in, it's a lot easier to make that transition. It's not as stressful. But there is something to be said with, you've heard the old adage, you eat what you kill, right?
Mhm.
So if you're solely committed to building a real estate career, and you get in the business now, it might be a little challenging, but it's based on the individual. There are many people that will get into real estate today and knock it out of the park because of their work ethic, their discipline, their conviction, their commitment to achieving their goals. You've always heard, tell me how big your dream is or your goals are, and I'll tell you if you're going to get there. That they have to be realistic, but you also have to set the bar high. So there are people that will get into real estate today and succeed no matter what, and that applies to many different careers that are challenging. I mean, you think about, I have young kids, 11, 12, and 13. My 13-year-old says, he wants to get into professional sports, and you and I both know the numbers. Even if you're a great player, you may never make the pros, and
Mhm.
you have to have. It's why people. It's why you say you tell your kids, go to college anyway, get your degree, get your education, because if you blow out a knee and you can't play anymore, then what? And
Yeah.
so you have to put your eyes on the prize, and stay focused on your goal, and you can achieve it. But it's always good to have some diversity and some contingency along the way.
And for you, your eye on the prize, your singular focus as you kind of navigate down through your career, the remaining part of your journey is real estate. And I guess my
Mhm.
question as we kind of talk about wrapping up is, and where do you see your work? Where do you see your professional trajectory in the years
Mhm.
ahead?
I see it continuing to be in almost like an advisory role. Like everybody knows the movie The Godfather, and you have the consigliere, who's the consultant to the family. And because the nature of real estate is that you have to do the work first, and you get paid after, right? And that's
Right.
one of the things I like about it, which we spoke about,
Yeah.
because I have to help you achieve your goals in order for me to achieve mine, right? So there's no better way to align your synergies and to have the same objective as your client, than to help them achieve it. And in doing so, you're rewarded for it. That's definitely part of it that I like. But I enjoy adding value to people's lives and helping them achieve their goals, because they remember that and they value it for the most part. And they'll call on you, they'll refer you, they'll tell other people to seek counsel with you in real estate. And that's how you build your business, and that's how it continues to grow. So that's my objective is to continue to work on bigger and bigger deals naturally, so the income increases without having to work 20 hours a day, and have more time with my family. It's the whole reason I got into commercial real estate from residential. Was it was more structured, it was more 9 to 5, and I had more time with my family. And that transition has worked out, and God willing, the next transition will as well.
Amen. And you talk a lot about serving and kind of guiding and building
Mhm.
relationships. And there's a word that also came up when we were talking before when I asked you about down the road. And you mentioned something that I love because I've been doing it in my consulting is you talked about teaching and you said at some point you want to teach. And
Yes.
it just seems so natural that it blends into your kind of value construct, but also for those of us in our 50s and 60s who are also thinking about not a side hustle at this age, but kind of what comes
Right.
next.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about the teaching? And then we'll just kind of wrap up and I'll ask you how people who are interested in following up and get in touch with you.
Sure. So when I went to Hofstra, and there was no course that was recommended or required on personal finance, right? So how many kids will come out of college and go into the workforce, and they don't really know what a pension is, what a 401k is,
Or a bank
what an
statement.
IRA is, right, or banks, right,
Yeah.
what a checkbook is. But
Mhm.
they don't understand how credit works,
Yeah.
how you build credit, just like we used to save up for something. Like, when was the last time I heard somebody say, I'm saving up for this? No, it's like I'm getting a loan for this, or I'm leveraging this.
Right.
It's a different world. There's an app for everything, but you know, personal finance is something that definitely needs to be taught on the probably on the high school level, definitely on the college level, and it's something that I would enjoy doing, pro bono, just to be able to not not change the world, but have an impact on somebody somewhere, that they could say, I had this professor back at Hofstra that told me about, ABC, or SBA financing, or whatever it is, and it made an impact on their life, and it
Yeah.
was, their life was better because of it. So that's something I would enjoy to do, just sharing the knowledge that I wish had been, put upon me many, many moons ago.
Always the teacher, always the mentor. Hey, Ben, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate you coming on the program. And I want to ask if somebody wants to have a follow-up conversation with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
I would definitely say my cell phone, 516-353-6549. I try to pick it up every time someone calls, and if not, it's a text. Can I call you later? And
Yeah,
can continue that conversation. So appreciate you having me on, and maybe next time we'll switch places so you can learn more about what you do as well.
absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, if you want to get in touch with Ben Indiviglia, he's real estate at Douglas Elliman, and I will put your cell phone, your LinkedIn contact details, the website all underneath so people can go right there and get in touch with you.
Much appreciated. Speak soon.
Thanks, Ben.